Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Getting to This Place podcast. We are speaking to Reeya Banerjee and Luke Folger, who have collaborated on a great album called This Place. They've collaborated on projects previously. So, for this first episode, we're going to talk a little bit about the background and how we got to this place. And then subsequent episodes, we're each going to go through one song at a time, talk about the meanings of those songs. The record comes out when, Reeya?
It comes out August 22nd, 2025. And we're going to be releasing singles along the way before.
All right, so let's dive right in. So the new album is called This Place. The previous album was called The Way Up. So I'm thinking back and I'm realizing, Reeya, you and I have known each other probably 10 years or so at this point.
Just about. Yeah.
And I have witnessed your musical evolution and trajectory from the beginning, either as an audience member, in some cases, literally standing on stage right next to you, in other cases, pointing a camera at you. And I've seen it from the outside, as have many other people. But what I haven't seen is what was the inner monologue, what was the thought process that led you to that album. So why don't you just dive in and start by telling me a little bit about The Way Up and where that came from, and in particular, how you encountered Luke and how the two of you collaborated on that record.
Sure. So I met Luke over email first. We have some friends in common, Chris Ford and Ruth Walker, who are in the Beacon Music Factory network that Mark and I are in as well. And they've known Luke. How long have you known them?
I was working at a coffee shop, and they used to come in every day, and we would just chit chat. And they knew I was a musician and a composer, and so they said, "Oh, we got this singer, a friend of ours up in was it Newburgh or Beacon at the time? Probably Beacon."
I think I was in Beacon, but yeah.
Yeah.
And similar thing. I was just hanging out with them, just drinking on the porch with them, and they were like, "Hey, we've seen you do these cover shows at Beacon Music Factory, and we think you're great. And have you ever thought about doing original music?" And I said, "I have, but I don't know how." And they said, "Hey, we know a guy who might be helpful to you, and you kind of, you're the same age, and you kind of have the same sort of sensibility. We think, we've known him for a while. Let's, put you two in touch and see if you click and see what happens from there." And so I think we just had Chris send an email introduction between the two of us, and we chatted for a bit, and I said, "I've never done this before, and I need some, just some guidance, some help. I'm a little bit of imposter syndrome in there, probably."
Oh, yeah, I know about that one. I'm glad they did too, because I was pretty new to writing entire songs with singing. So I'm so glad you took a leap of faith on me to help write. I was composing all kinds of stuff. I was arranging in a band before then. I'm a drummer mainly, and so writing a whole song with singing was something I wanted to get more into. So I actually bought an electric guitar for Reeya's project, because I was like, I've been thinking about getting one. And I actually got it at this weird electronic store on Dykeman Street in Washington Heights. I think it fell out of a truck because it was kind of dinked up, but it was only $100. So that was on both records. But
cool.
Yeah, that's great.
I didn't know that. So yeah, we just sort of, and that was I want to say that was in 2019. That was before everything kind of, that was when we first connected and started talking about it. And then conversations continued, and 2020 happened. And then 2020 happened. And we were both under lockdown. We were talking about, what would I want to write an album about? To be perfectly candid, I was coming out of a fairly severe mental health crisis. I was, basically I was in recovery at that point, but I don't know. I think a lot of people were facing their demons in lockdown because what else are you going to do when you're sitting with yourself and not interacting with people? But I was fresh out of an intensive outpatient program, specializing in dialectical behavioral therapy. So I kind of was like, I was really into like, okay, I think I know myself now, and I know what my issues are, and I know what I need to do to work through, and where it all came from. And I think I have something to say now about healing. And emotional growth and recovering from grief and learning how to, kind of accept yourself, flaws and all, and not, condemn yourself for having struggles. So I think I kind of told you, I was like, this is what's on my mind, Luke. And, and then, we just sort of, we went from there. I was like, here's just some thoughts I have, some songs maybe that, or I don't even know if I had concrete song ideas. I was like, here's just some ideas that I think would make cool songs. And then
it was
really
just a
rich lot
material.
of email back and forth. It was just a big flurry of collaboration, but we didn't actually meet until I came down to the city to track the vocals. He had all of the tracks ready. We had all of the songs and the lyrics all mapped out and ready to go. And it was just a kind of hilarious, like, hi, nice to meet you. Okay, let's
make a record.
it.
So let me go back. Let me go to Luke for a minute here, because I want to hear this story from his side as well. Like when you guys were collaborating, Reeya would send you. Obviously, this is a very personal record, and you talk about struggles with mental health and the way up, essentially climbing out of that hole that you were in. When Reeya was sending you these ideas, these brain dumps, these emails, whatever, what was your working flow to get from that to turn it into songs? And in terms of the lyrics, was it a situation where you wrote things where she had given you ideas, or did she write lines and then you interpolated them into what you were working on? Musical style, the sound, the tonality that you chose, where did all of that, just give me a sense of how all of that came about.
Yeah, great question. Well, I was, like I said, kind of new to writing whole songs with guitar, although at the time I was writing a lot of jingles for this branding company. So they'd send me like, we need a country rock song or a radio rock song. So I was kind of faking my way through it. But I come from a background of like punk and emo and like rock music. And with we had talked about like bands we like, Reeya and I, and we would just text each other like, oh, do you like this band? Yeah, I totally like this band. What about this? Yeah. And in that list was like Foo Fighters, Incubus, and I like power pop, and I was going for power pop with this. So I had some instrumental ideas, which is when I would just sit down and get an idea and like record it, which would usually be a guitar idea, and then I'd put some bass and drums under it, and then I'd send that to Reeya, be like, do you like this? And Reeya was always just like, this is awesome, and she was very encouraging and enthusiastic, which was nice. So glad you took a chance on this once again.
I mean, you took a chance on me too. So.
Yeah, we helped each other. I really learned how to write better working with you and helping write these songs.
How will I heal? Slow and in real time. Break from the stress. Heart from my chest. How will I feel when forced to kill time? I've gotta pass if this is a test.
Moving on from that, I mean, you collaborated on that first record and The Way Up, a line there, and then you did two singles, which kind of, to my ears, mark a bridge. Like there's sort of a trajectory in terms of the musical evolution, but also in terms of your lyrical content and, the story of your life, where the first record is a lot about kind of fighting through the pain and trying to find your footing and working your way out of things. When you get to your two singles, which were Mechanic of the Hudson and Shadows, there's a more assertive Reeya that comes out, I'm going to say, for lack of a better term. Mechanic came first, I believe.
It did.
Yeah. And in Mechanic, there's a line that you have in there that I'm going to quote back to you. It says, "I'm closing in on something, a thing that's kept me blind, a feeling under pressure, an ice pick in my mind, nowhere to go."
And I'm closing in on something, a thing that's kept me blind, a feeling under pressure, an ice pick in my mind, nowhere to go.
It sounds to me like you're starting to almost have an awakening there, like from the person that you were, you're becoming something new. What was going on when that came about?
Yeah, so that's I'll say in the those two singles you're talking about, I actually collaborated with James Rubino on those. He's just a buddy again from the Beacon Music Factory days, and he was like, "Hey, you have a lot of creative momentum going right now. While you percolate with Luke on the next album, let's see if we can toss some more Reeya music out into the world, so that people don't forget that you're out there." You're talking about a more assertive Reeya, absolutely coming out of the way up. I was like, okay, I think I know now how original tunes are created. And so that gave me the confidence to be like, okay, let's see if I can do this and be more, proactive in the writing of the lyrics and collaborating with James on what I wanted the sound to be like and what the vibe would be. Just the evolution of my healing process, and just like, okay, so I'm out of the immediate post crisis, and now I'm in the how to integrate the new version of myself into my life while also undergoing a huge change in my life by moving away from home. So there's a lot of, there's the mechanic in the mechanic of the Hudson, the figure who shows up and he's kind of helpful but kind of not helpful. But the idea is I'm talking to somebody, and it might not even really be an actual mechanic. It's just a figure in my life of, like, what do I do now? Where do I go now with this new understanding of myself?
And you followed right on the heels of that with Shadows, which to me is like almost a cathartic kind of
Oh yeah.
scream. I mean
Yeah.
that the again, I'm going to quote you a lyric from that one where and to listen to this song, which I recommend all of you folks out there do. It just builds, it stacks in layers and layers and layers, and it just keeps coming up, and it feels like you're just purging everything out of your soul and almost clearing the palette for what's going to become,
Yeah.
this place. You're starting, when you start this place, you've arrived at this level. But Shadows to me seems to be the final bit of, like, taking the sledgehammer to everything and just, emerging from the rubble and being like, yeah, here I am.
I'm tired of living so far in the past, tired of hating myself. Life goes fast, the moment has come. A choice to be free, walk away from all that and walk home to know me. Let it go. Time to live a little. Let it go. Time to live a lot. Let it go. And it'll all be alright. Because you're the
The moment has come, a choice to be free, walk away from all that, walk off an old me, let it go, time to live a little, let it go, time to live a lot, let it go, and it will be all right. You sound, for the first time in your musical journey, almost optimistic.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Especially, it's funny. We intended for Mechanic and Shadows to be, if it was back in the old days, that would be an A side and a B side. And so the A side, Mechanic, is a little bleak, and a little depressing, but then Shadows was supposed to be like, okay, exactly as you said, like, now I'm purging the last of that. I'm pushing through. I'm actively choosing to not let that the old me being the one who is in crisis and coming out of crisis. I'm not going to define myself solely by that experience. Yes, it informed who I am, but I don't want to be like, hey, I'm the person who came out of the mental health crisis, and that's my definition. And so, yeah, it is very cathartic. When we were recording the choruses to that song, just, if we're talking about catharsis, I blew my voice out, during the tracking sessions for the choruses, because it was just like,
You can hear it on the record. You can
yeah,
hear the emotion that's in there. It's really
yeah,
raw, and it's really
yeah.
kind of amazing.
Yeah, and it was very, very, very cathartic. And then I had to go on vocal rest for 2 weeks because I could barely talk after that.
So, Luke, during the time that the singles were in progress, were you already starting to think about the next album?
Oh
And
yeah.
and what was your response as you witnessed Reeya's own growth and evolution, as we've been discussing?
Oh yeah, good question. Well, it was nice to hear those singles because, well, when I was writing the melodies for everything on the way up, that was all some stuff that I was singing, and I knew that Reeya had kind of a lower register voice for female, and I had kind of a mid voice for a male, so I kind of sang a little high and hoped that she would meet in the middle. But it's cool to see where Reeya's voice just went sort of naturally, because it was like more of your own design. And so like I heard your voice do some stuff. I was just like, oh man, it sits so well right there. So I really kept that in mind when composing vocal melodies for the second record. I was actually already like getting ideas together. I was out in Montana at my mother-in-law's shed where I have this music studio. And so most of the like bass ideas for the songs came up there. I love that, working in a woodshed. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yes.
always works.
Great.
So it was great. It was great to see those coming up and giving me and helping me inform me with where to go with some of the vocal stuff. The next one.
For sure.
All right, so just to wrap this up, because we've covered the background and we're going to go forward into the new album, Reeya, just tell me what the feeling was when you'd come through the first album, you'd done the 2 singles, and you knew that you were on the cusp of this next statement. Like how firm were you in your convictions about what it had to be, and how were you feeling when you said, okay, I'm going to go for another one of these? Was it ever a thought that maybe I said everything I have to say, or did you always know you had another record in you?
Nope. I pretty much, Luke, I think maybe within 2 weeks of the first record came out, we were like, all right, what's the follow up going to be?
Yeah.
So it was kind of already percolating. I've said what I wanted to say about mental health and the way up, and this was my way up. And now I kind of was thinking, okay, so if that was the mental health album, I want to talk about memory and nostalgia and like where I came from and the things that happened to me as I was growing up. Well, what got me to the place that made the first album come from, and what happens after that now that I'm moving forward and letting it go, walking off an old me.
And here we are now. Well, I think that's a perfectly good background, so let's leave it there. And thank you all out there for listening. And please tune in for future episodes where we're going to talk about the new record, This Place, and go through song by song and see where the narrative takes us. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.